Okay, welcome everybody. Can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, type yes in the chat box. Okay. There we go. Okay, great. People can hear me. Welcome. I'm glad to see you guys on here today. We have an exciting webinar that I have been working on with Shyronn Jones and Barb Cardell, who I'll introduce in just a moment, about using social media for advocacy work. And so, you know, whether you're brand new to social media or you've been doing it for a while but just kind of want to learn some pointers and do it a little bit better, you know, hopefully you will be able to get something out of this that you can use in your advocacy work. So welcome to everybody, and just so that you know, this is the webinar is being recorded, and so people will be able to watch it later. It will be available on our website, so if you want to share this with other folks at a later time or with your chapters, if you're part of a regional chapter, it will be available, and I will try to get it up on our website within the next couple of days and send out that link when it's up. So welcome, everyone, again. So our presenters today, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Our presenters today are going to be Shyronn Jones. So for over 10 years, Shyronn Jones has been an HIV/AIDS activist and advocate. And over a year ago, Shyronn created the I Know Awareness Facebook group that has served as an outlet for her to share valuable information. Before she started the group, Shyronn held an extensive work history in the human services field, and daily she linked people to information that improved their lives. This month also marks 1 year that she has been serving as the PWN-USA SCAT rep for the Georgia chapter. For those of you who don't know what the SCAT is, that's our Strategic Communications Action Team. And any woman living with HIV is welcome to be a member of that, and all of our regional chapters are supposed to have at least one SCAT rep. So Shyronn is Georgia's SCAT rep. She's wonderful. This is her first time presenting on a webinar, so she asked for your patience while she discovers her presentation style, but I know that she's going to do great because she always does. She says that there may be times when she talks low and slow and times when she talks fast and loud, but don't be worried. She's okay, and she's happy that you're here to witness her experience and growth. She's very humble, but Shyronn is really amazing. She is quite the powerhouse. If those of you who are already on social media, I'm sure you have seen her in action. She's also a speaker. She does public speaking and education around HIV, and she's all around just an amazing advocate, and I'm so happy to be presenting with her today. And for those of you who don't know Barb, which I guess a lot of you probably do, Barb Cardell has been HIV positive since 1991, and she's been involved with PWN since 2009. She's based in Boulder, Colorado, and she advocates for HIV-positive women's rights and awareness on a local, state, and national level, and started Colorado's PWN-USA regional chapter in January 2012. It now has over 20 members, and she created the If I Were HIV-Positive Community Education campaign. The chapter created that campaign for National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. In 2011, Barb was appointed by Governor Ritter to sit on the Colorado Coalition for HIV Care and Prevention, and she was elected vice chair of the coalition in 2012. In addition, Barb serves on the steering committee serves as a steering committee member for the People Living with HIV caucus, and she is also the PWN-USA board chair. And she starts each day by asking herself, what will you do with your wild, precious life? Which is an amazing question that we should all be asking ourselves every day. And so for those of you who haven't heard, PWN Colorado actually led the way in changing state law in Colorado and getting rid of some statutes that criminalize people living with HIV that mostly affected sex workers. And so it was quite an achievement. And she's going to be presenting about that victory later on and how social media and online tools helped them achieve that victory. So we're really excited to have her here sharing that experience with us today. So let me go ahead and get started here. Oh, I think I have to, I just realized, okay, I'm making the chat public right now. Hopefully you guys can see the chat now. Can you guys see the chat now? Type yes if you can see it. Want to make sure we can all. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to have it private. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So here's a little overview of what we're going to be covering in the training today. So first of all, what is social media and why use it for advocacy? Which networks should we use? Because there are quite a few options out there, which you may know some of them, you may not. We're really going to be focusing on Facebook and Twitter today, but we will kind of discuss a couple of the other major ones that people like to use. And then Shyronn's going to be going through some Facebook best practices and tips. So a little bit about, the personal, the political, or both, Facebook groups and how those can be used. I'm going to go over some best practices and tips for using Twitter. And Barb is going to be talking about integrating social media in a campaign, and specifically she'll be talking about what they did in Colorado. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So I would ask that you try to hold your questions as much as possible for the end, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask Shyronn or Barb or I or all of the above your questions. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. But we're going to start off actually with a poll question. And the question is, do you currently use social media? And if so, do you use it for personal contact, just keeping in touch with family and friends? Do you use it for advocacy work, for activism and politics? Do you use it for both, or do you really not use social media at all right now? And I'm going to open up the poll right here. Oops, here we go. And I'm opening up the poll, so if you can, just go ahead and put in your votes, and then we'll see kind of where everyone is starting out from. And I see in the chat that some our folks in New York are having trouble hearing. So I'm putting in the chat box about the audio instructions. So give me just a second. Okay, I just put some call-in instructions. Okay, it looks like we've got the votes are in, and so far it looks like everybody who is on here right now uses social media both for personal contact and for advocacy and activism, which is great. That's what I do, and I think that's what Barb and Shyronn do as well. So it's good to see, we're kind of starting from the same place here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll out. And so just a quick, really brief overview of social media. So it looks like everyone who's on here pretty much knows what social media is and is already using it, at least, to a certain extent. So, it's really funny when we think about social media, how dependent a lot of us are on it nowadays. Like, it seems like it's really hard for me to get through a day without looking at Facebook at least a couple of times, and commenting on people's stuff and posting articles that I find and posting pictures if I'm out with friends or something. It's really become a part of our daily lives, but it's still pretty new. I remember first seeing MySpace back in 2006 or 2007. I was like, what is this? Why would I want to do that? And then all of a sudden there was Facebook, and all of a sudden everybody migrated from MySpace to Facebook. I don't know if you guys even remember MySpace, but everybody migrated all of a sudden overnight to Facebook. And then even Facebook itself has sort of evolved over the past few years. It's kind of different now than it was then. There's definitely a lot more people on it now. My parents are actually on Facebook now, which is surprising to me at first. So it's really become ubiquitous, and you can really see it everywhere. And most people I know are on some form of social media. Whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or all of the above. I don't think I know anyone anymore who's not on something. And so I think that sort of leads into the second question of why we would use social media for advocacy work, because if our idea is to get our message out to as many people as possible, then we want to kind of find people where they are. And since we don't see people outside in the streets every single day, it is a really good and fast way to get in touch with people. And, sort of the more you're on there and the more people you know on there, especially in the advocacy world, the more you're able to share information, the more you're able to sort of organize events and get people together. You're able to educate your friends and your family and other people who may not be doing the same type of advocacy work that you're doing. So it's really just kind of a way to find people where they are, get your message out there, share resources and information with other people, organize events. So there's really a whole lot that you can do with social media. So even people who maybe don't really like spending a lot of time on social media can find it really useful if you use it strategically. So if I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the different networks that there are. And, you already know what these networks are, but in terms of what features about them might be useful or limiting to you in your work, I kind of wanted to go over that a little bit. So in terms of Facebook, I'm going to start with Facebook because that's where most people seem to be nowadays. So I'd say everyone is there. It's not everybody, but it's getting pretty close, I feel like. I was just reading the other day some Pew Research. In 2014, 64% of adults had a Facebook account, and 30% of adults got their news from Facebook. And I think the number is probably even higher now because that's already almost 2 years old, and I think there's a lot of people who have joined even in the last 2 years, so I bet you those numbers are higher. And the fact that 30% of people get their news from Facebook is also meaningful to me in the sense that people are getting their information there. So it is for friends and family and pictures and all that, but people really are finding information there. And so it tells you that if you want people to see articles that support your message, that's a good place to put them where people are going to see it. It can also be really useful for communicating within a group or a regional chapter. For example, if you're a PWN member and you have a regional chapter, and Shyronn is going to go more into some of the ways that you can communicate through Facebook groups. It's also good, of course, for sharing photos and videos, articles, and your thoughts. And there aren't too many limitations. You can kind of write as much as you want. It's not like Twitter that has a character limit. So that, it's, other than you're not supposed to post nudity or, certain people can report you if they think you're posting offensive content, but for the most part, there aren't too many limitations on what you can share on Facebook. It's also very useful for creating and sharing events, for updating participants of events, for collecting RSVPs. I put little asterisks next to these because it's sort of, there are some things you should know about that. For whenever I use Facebook to create an event, especially if it's, for an organization more than maybe for a personal party or something, but if it's some kind of public event and we collect RSVPs by Facebook, what it basically tells me is not that exact number of people are actually going to show up, because a lot of people will RSVP for things that they maybe have no intention of actually coming to. They may not even live in that town, but they're interested in it and they want to show support for it. Sometimes people say they're going to go, and of course they can't for whatever reason, or they change their minds and don't want to, or, there's any number of reasons why people don't follow through with their RSVPs. But what it does do is kind of let people know it's out there. Sometimes, people's Facebook friends can see that they RSVP'd for something, and that tells them that event exists, and maybe they go on and see it. It also gives the organizers an idea of how many people might be coming, because there usually will be people coming who did not RSVP on Facebook. And in my experience, about half of the people who RSVP for a Facebook event tend to actually show up for it. So, of course, it's not a hard, fast commit. And if you're looking for hard, fast commitments from people, then you might want to collect RSVPs in a different way, or even better, if it's important for organizing purposes, you might want to do some, one-on-one contact to make sure those people are actually coming. But it does give you an idea that people know about it and are interested in it. And it allows you to update them. So, for example, those of you who plan on going to the Speak Up Summit and have RSVP'd to our Facebook event, when we post something on that page, you'll see it, you'll get a notification. And so it's a way of kind of building excitement and letting people know that it's there and letting people know when things have been updated, et cetera. And then there's different privacy settings and options on Facebook, so you can sort of choose who you allow to see what you post and you don't. And, for the groups, again, Shyronn will go a little bit more into that later. But I put an asterisk next to this one as well just because I think it's really important to remember that anything that you post online, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or a website or a blog or anywhere, once it's posted, you should assume that that is out there in the universe and will be found by somebody, even if you decide to delete it, take it down. Screenshots exist. People take screenshots and save them. There also are some websites that allow you to look at previous versions of web pages and stuff. So you should always think before you post. A word of advice is don't post in anger because you might write something that you're going to end up wishing you hadn't put out there. And once it's out there, you can delete it, but you can't really get rid of it. So just keep in mind that whatever you're posting is going to kind of live on in the universe forever. So just kind of be cautious with that. Limitations for Facebook, it can be difficult to get your content seen by your target audience because you can't really know for sure who's going to see it. You can tag people. That's one way to make sure that specific people you want to see it will probably see it, but you can't really control whose news feed it goes into. It's not really that effective for doing real-time posting or updating on breaking news because a lot of times what you post won't be seen until later because of the algorithms that Facebook uses to put things into people's news feeds. And there's not really a good way to target messages to elected leaders or political candidates or celebrities or other people who are not your Facebook friends. Twitter is actually better for that, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute. And so getting to Twitter, the strengths for Twitter is a really good place to share articles, photos, videos, to share your thoughts. It's very, very useful, I would say, for real-time updates. So if you're at a conference, for example, and you hear a great quote, a lot of people will go to Twitter to get that quote out there. It's, great for breaking news when there's developments happening. So a lot of people actually do turn to Twitter for sort of real-time breaking news and updates. It's really useful for targeting elected leaders and political candidates, celebrities, people you don't know personally, because they'll be able to, if you tag them with their Twitter handle, it will actually, they'll get a notification about it. So you don't have to be part of their inner circle to get your message to them. It's easy to find and share information and perspectives from and with a broad public by using hashtags, which I think probably since you all in here have said that you're all on social media, you've probably seen or used hashtags. For example, hashtag HIV, you're going to find all kinds of stuff there, and people will be able to see what you post as well. It's been a popular space for activist organizing for several years. I'm sure you've heard about, uprisings in other countries that were in part organized on Twitter. So it has been very useful. And then Twitter chats allow for real-time online conversations on a topic that all kinds of people can join in. So you've probably joined into a Twitter chat. PWN-USA has hosted Twitter chats and been a special guest on Twitter chats on various topics relating to women living with HIV. So that's another tool. And I put here a quote from DeRay McKesson, who has been organizing around Black Lives Matter. So he was talking about his experience in this article with social media, and he said, Twitter specifically has been interesting because we're able to get feedback and responses in real time. If we think about this as community building, and we think of community building as a manifestation of love, and we think about love being about accountability and accountability about justice, what's interesting is that Twitter has kept us honest. There's a democracy of feedback. I've had really robust conversations with people who aren't physically in the space, but who have such great ideas, and that's proven to be invaluable. So it really is a way to sort of dialogue with people all over the world, actually, not even just the country, but all over the world that you may never otherwise meet, but you kind of get to learn from them. You're going to find a lot of crazy stuff on Twitter, too, so you have to take that with a grain of salt, but it can be really valuable for activism. And then limitations of Twitter. Though there is a 140-character limit, and that can be tricky, especially if you're not used to it. So, for example, if you're going to participate in a Twitter chat, it's always a good idea to get the questions first so you can kind of start getting your answers into 140 characters or less. There is no privacy on Twitter, so everything you post is automatically public. So, again, don't post in anger. Kind of be thoughtful about what you post. It's worth thinking about it for a couple of minutes before you do it. Twitter is infamous for trolls, as we like to say. Activists can often face harassment and threats on Twitter, so, kind of be aware that if you're posting things that people might see as controversial, you might get some negative feedback from that, and you just, you have to either have a thick skin or maybe you don't want to go on Twitter if you're going to be really sensitive to negative feedback. There are constant streams of information, opinions, and feedback, and it can be really challenging to keep up. I find it challenging to keep up, and I'm on there for work quite a bit. And then one limitation is that there are not as many people on Twitter as there are on Facebook. So in 2014, only 16% of adults had a Twitter, but 64% had a Facebook. So, it is worth keeping in mind. On the other hand, it is a really popular activist space. And so Barb talked about if people are trolled, do you engage or ignore? She put in the chat box. And it sort of depends. I know Shyronn is going to sort of talk about what she does. I would actually be interested to hear what Barb does when we get to her part of the presentation. Personally, it depends on how they're trolling. If it seems like they just don't know any better, I will try to educate first. But if they persist in being really confrontational or obnoxious or irrational about it, I tend to either ignore them or block them. There are different ways you can go, but I usually try to start with education first, but if that doesn't work, then, at a certain point, some people just want to fight, and you don't really necessarily want to give them what they want. So I'm going to have Shyronn and Barb both kind of talk about their approaches to that in a minute. And then quickly with Instagram, I'm not going to go much into Instagram today, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with it, but just quickly, it is a fun app, and it's very phone friendly. It's good for sharing photos, videos, and graphics, anything visual. You can search for things by hashtag, similar to Twitter. It is very popular with younger people and with some people who refuse to use Facebook. I have several friends who are not on Facebook who are on Instagram. It's good for meme campaigns. And it has different privacy settings. So again, sort of like Facebook, you can make it where different people can or can't see your stuff, but just be aware that it's still, once it's online, it's pretty much public. So you still want to be careful what you post. And it is easy to share images that you post on Instagram instantly to Facebook and Twitter, et cetera. Usually when you're posting it, you can just click, that you want to share it to one of your other social media accounts as well. So it can sort of, you can integrate it with the other social media that you use. And I noticed on the chat box, it looks like a lot of people are sending the messages private to presenters. So if you want everyone to see what you're typing, make sure that above where you type the message, it says send to everyone. Otherwise, it's just going to be Barb and Shyronn and I who can see it. Okay, and then for limitations of Instagram, it's not very useful for sharing articles or links or anything that's non-visual. Its reach is more limited than Facebook or Twitter. There's not as many people on there, basically. And while you can like and comment on other people's posts, you really can't share them directly to your account. So it's much more limited. It's really a very visual space. And then YouTube, I'm sure everyone has watched videos on YouTube. Some of you have probably uploaded and shared videos through YouTube. So I won't spend a lot of time on this one either because it's not really particularly useful all by itself, but it does work really well with other types of social media. It's great because you can upload and share videos of any length. They don't have to be super short. You can search by tag, by keywords. You can share videos really easily to Facebook, Twitter, by email. You can embed them in websites and blogs. There's different privacy settings, but once again, be aware that once it's out there, it's assumed that it's going to be out there forever and that anyone might see it. And you can set up a channel where the people who are interested in your videos can subscribe, or they can find them easily. And you can subscribe to channels that are sharing content that you like. So it does have some cool features that you can use. And limitations, of course, it's only video, so that is pretty limiting. And then it's got a pretty limited reach unless you promote it on other social media networks or embed it in a website. Okay, and I am now going to pass it over to Shyronn, who's going to be talking more in depth about Facebook. Are you there, Shyronn? Shyronn, we can't hear you, so if you are muted, please make sure to unmute yourself. I'm not sure if you're using the microphone or the phone right now. Maybe I need to, I might need to unmute you. Let me see. A second, sorry. Let me see if I can find Shyronn to unmute. Her number on here. Sorry, guys. There we go. Let's see. It looks like it's unmuted. Shyronn, can you make sure that your phone itself is not on mute? Because it's not muted on my end. Okay, she said she's on the phone and her phone is off mute, but I don't hear you. Maybe Shyronn, try using the microphone and try unmuting it. I tried to unmute it here, but it shows that you muted it yourself. Okay, still don't hear you. Shyronn, I'll go ahead and start covering this part. Can you try calling back in and see if maybe we can hear you? Sometimes there are just technical difficulties. Maybe you can just try hanging up and calling back in. I'm not sure why we're not able to hear you. So I'm going to go ahead and start this page while we try to get Shyronn back on. Shyronn, as soon as you're back on, talk, and if we hear you, I'll turn it right over to you. So here we're talking about Facebook. So she's on the phone and mic. Okay, so while we try to get Shyronn back on here, so just some quick practices, best practices and tips. As far as personal or political, one question a lot of people people don't like Facebook because they feel like people get really personal on there. You can be aware that it's really a choice how personal you want to be on Facebook. So there is absolutely nothing that says you have to share all the details of your personal life with the world. You can totally be an advocate online or off without sharing details from your personal life. So 100% of choice. Some people like to share all those details. Some people don't. So you don't have to do that if you don't want to. One option you can use is to, if you don't want to, put yourself out there, especially when we're talking about HIV advocacy, if there are people that you haven't disclosed to and you don't necessarily want the whole world to know your business, you can create an account under a pseudonym that you use for advocacy if you want to talk about personal experiences over social media without necessarily having to disclose to family or friends or your employer or coworkers. That's another option. And again, assume that anything that you post online will live forever and can be seen by anyone. So even if you have, privacy settings that are not supposed to show everything to everyone, just assume that anyone might see it and post accordingly. Don't put anything on there so private that you're going to be really upset if people that you didn't want to know about it find out, because once it's online, it is out there. I'm going to get Shyronn back on here. Just a second, sorry. If we can't get her back on here, we might I might skip ahead to Barb's section, and then we can come back to Shyronn a little bit later, because I do want her to present her part. So. So Shyronn, if you can hear, please try hanging up and calling back in with the same number and access code. I think she's going to try that right now. So I'll go ahead and start this, and as soon as she gets on, she can jump in. So yeah, it looks like she hung up. She's going to try calling back in. And so I can tell you real quickly with a page for Facebook, so for example, organizations, chapters, and groups, you can create a page which is different from a group, and the administrators will have more control over what is posted. So you can kind of decide what shows up on your group's page, or sorry, on the page. As opposed to a group. It allows for a lot of control. You can create events through the page instead of creating them as an individual. And you can pay to boost posts, which means that Facebook will make sure that more people see it. What I have found in my experience is that unless you already have a really large engaged following with a page, it can be pretty difficult for your stuff to show up in people's news feed, which means you can be posting and people won't see it. And Facebook really incentivizes you to pay to post. So Facebook is very pay to play when you have like an organizational page. And so the good part of it is it's pretty cheap. $1 or $2 will actually go pretty far in making sure people see what you post. But it is it does sometimes require that. So pages can be kind of tricky if you're, if you don't have a budget to work with, if you're kind of starting for nothing. Shyronn says she just called back in. Let's see if she is. Make sure she's unmuted. Shyronn, can you say something? Are you on? I don't see your phone number on here on the list. Okay, I'm gonna try. Okay, I'm going to go into Q&A mode to make sure that we're, I think that, let's see here. Sorry, folks, just a second.
Entry and exit chimes are on. Entry and exit chimes are off. All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Okay, Shyronn, can you try pressing *6 and see if we can hear you?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Shyronn Jones.
Yay! Okay, we hear you now. Thank you. I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yay. Hi, yes. How I love social media, and let me start by counting some ways. I mainly use social media as a tool for educating and advocacy. It fits my schedule. It's free, easy for me to use, and it instantly connects me to the people and content I care most. And one tip I'm going to share off of this slide right here is about, let's see, what slide we on for a minute? Sorry. Okay. The fourth dot, where it could be hard to get your content seen. One setting that helps solve that issue is by changing your default setting to first. Wait, hold on. Sorry. So you change it to first. I believe it's first. I'm looking where I had that note, where I had it noted. But if you change your default settings so that you can see the content that the page that you like, you can see those settings right there. I mean, you can see their content faster rather than just have it on default. So that's one helpful tip for using a page. And you can also pay Facebook to advertise for you and create events through the group instead of as an individual. And creating groups is becoming a common and popular form of communicating, especially with the regional chapters. And Georgia chapter, we do have a Facebook page, and we have plans of creating a future group. And it's also a good thing to talk with your chapter to decide what type of Facebook group you would like to create. There are 3 main types of groups: secret, public, and closed. So speaking with the women and having them be a part of the development of the group may increase their participation and management in the group. Now, the main differences of the 3 groups: a public group, anyone can find the group, see who's in it and what they post. A closed group, anyone can find the group and see who's in it, but only see posts if they are a member. A secret group is invite only. No one can find the group unless they're a member of the group. Now, if you're in the business of having people look for you and you would like to be visible, having a public group may be a good fit for you. It allows you to be more open and easily findable. And also, if you have members that are concerned about disclosure, it may be a good idea to name the group where it's not excluding members, well, excluding certain demographics. You may just want to open it to members and allies. That's something that the Colorado group has done. They have a group named for their members and allies. So the group is not just for persons living with HIV. And also in creating a page, like I was trying to explain earlier, to always find the latest post from a page at the top of your news feed, changing your news feed settings from default settings to see first, so that you can see those posts from the particular page that you have interest in. So without changing that setting, it will be hard to see content from pages. Next, I'll talk a little about my group that I started over a year ago, I Know Awareness. I started the Facebook group because I needed to share destigmatizing images and content. Too often I would come across stigmatizing images and articles about HIV, and I wanted to show a side of HIV many people didn't see. So I started by sharing cartoon illustrations, which is still one of the most content that receives likes and engagement. And then as I started expanding my network of friends, which included many advocates, I started to share their stories and products, and often I would tag them in the post to increase the engagement. And I have 4 main categories of friends in the I Know Awareness group. One being people who live or lived in neighborhoods that I grew up in, areas that are highly populated with low-income people of color, where I wanted them to witness the information that I was sharing. And also I have people who are activists with hopes that they would contribute to the content in the group and also network with other activists. And I have many people who are unaware of their status, and I wanted to have a place for them to get a peek into education and current events surrounding HIV. And lastly but not least, I have many people who are living with HIV, and it's a place where they can find information about surveys, webinars, events, share their products, viewpoints, stories, and support. There's many ways to do things when you have a group, but the way that I invite people in my group, it works for me. I'm sure it won't work for a lot of people, but quarterly I'll post a message on my Facebook wall saying I'm going to invite people, and I start inviting people. And of course, sometimes people choose not to stay in the group. They want to be removed, or they get upset because I didn't ask them. But for me, it works for me. And any conversations I have afterwards with someone one-on-one, mostly messaging, I just apologize. I tell them I wasn't intended to be disrespectful to them or uncourteous, and I just remove them as fast as I can. And most recently, yesterday, I had included in the post that they can remove themselves independently and gave them those steps to remove themselves. But usually how I deal with people who are quote-unquote trolls is by blocking them as soon as I can. That's what I do mostly. In addition to educating often and rarely ignoring. I really ignore any unwanted comments. I address it, and I don't keep unwanted people in the group or unwanted conversations coming from them in the group. For a person who is starting off with a group, I suggest subscribing to some popular email lists. A few that I recommend is CDC. They also provide publications through the mail for free. They have a nice library of materials anyone can have shipped to their home for free. But they also have a great database of vital statistics, which is also something that's very engaging for people. People love statistics. The Kaiser Family Foundation, Georgia Equality, they're doing a lot of things in the political circle, and also Georgia Win List, GAWINLIST.com. They're a political action committee dedicated to changing the face of power in Georgia by electing pro-choice Democratic women to state and House Senate. And Sister Love is a go-to organization here, and they have a lot of lunch and learns and gatherings. And also Googling. I started off Googling cartoon pictures about HIV and putting those exact words in the search bar, and being connected with other advocates and sharing what they are sharing. And a few other things that are engaging that I find people in my group to engage in is the events and the paid surveys and the recognition nominations. You know, there's two big ones coming up. POZ 100, they're looking for some activists here in the South, and 2020 Leading Women nomination led by Sister Love, and also articles and pictures and videos on personal stories of people living with HIV. But to help get started, I would recommend building a resource library of content, like I said, by Googling, signing up for mailing lists, and building a network of activists. Doing this will keep you well stocked with valuable information to share in your group or your page. And in the future, I hope to open my group to the general public. In 2017, I plan to change the group privacy settings from secret to closed. And I'll definitely welcome everyone on this call, everyone's listening to the recording, to send me a request to join into my group. And if you have any further questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shyronn. And just so everyone knows, the last slide is going to have an email address for Barb, Shyronn, and I. So if you want to get in touch with any of us offline, if you want to be added to Shyronn's group, for example, you can email her, or if you're Facebook friends with her, of course, you can send her a message there as well if you're not part of that group and you want to be. She posts great information, and other people share information on that group as well. So I definitely recommend to be on it if you're not. And quick poll question, because we're about to go into Twitter quickly, and then I'm going to pass it to Barb after that so that she can tell us about their awesome campaign in Colorado and how they use social media. But sort of Twitter poll, I know pretty much everyone on here is probably on Facebook. I've seen most of you on Facebook. But how many of you currently use Twitter, and how much? So I'm going to run the poll real quick. So just take 1 second to let us know if you currently use Twitter a lot, occasionally, or sometimes rarely, or not at all.
Is there no way to answer the poll on a cell phone?
Oh, I don't think that you can. I'm sorry.
No, I don't see anything. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so right now it's looking like about half of the people who voted occasionally use Twitter. Only 20% seem to use Twitter a lot. 20% use Twitter rarely, and 10% don't use Twitter at all. So it looks like probably a little bit less familiar with Twitter than with Facebook. So just to go through quickly some best practices, I know Barb is going to talk some more about Twitter in a minute, so I won't spend too much time on this. But, you know, people, when they get started on Twitter, if they're used to Facebook, it can be a little bit confusing because it is different. So just remember that it's useful for joining public conversations on a specific issue or topic using hashtags. It's good for real-time updates. It's good for targeting people that you're not actually friends with or don't have a personal connection to. And in terms of getting more followers, because one of the common problems with Twitter is just not having anybody following you, and how do you get more people to follow you? My number one suggestion is just to follow other people. especially people, of course, who are posting things that you're interested in, who are, involved in politics or advocacy or any of the other areas that you're interested in getting information about. The more you follow, the more people will follow you, because a lot of times people will follow you back when you follow them. Contribute meaningfully to public conversations using trending hashtags. So, see what's popular. If it's something you're interested in, be using that hashtag. Tweet often and thoughtfully. If people like what you tweet, they'll start following you and paying attention. So, think before you tweet. Reply to other people's tweets using their Twitter handle. And then retweet or mention others in your tweets. That way you get seen, and there's more people who are likely to follow you from that. Plus, people who follow them will be able to see what you posted, so it's always good to include other people. And then live tweeting at events using the events hashtag. The other people at the event will most likely see what you posted. They'll probably follow you, especially if you're posting interesting things. So those are just a few ways of getting more people to follow you if you're just getting started. And then just kind of quickly looking at the anatomy of Twitter, a handle is that little, we call it the @ sign. I call it an @ sign because I'm old school like that, but it's they call it a Twitter handle. So, for example, PWN, our Twitter handle is USPWN. A mention would be if you use somebody's Twitter handle in your tweet. That's called a mention. The hashtags, of course, you know what those are, but there's a few examples. A link, of course, is something you're linking to. If you want to shorten your link because of the character limit, you can use bit.ly, which is bit.ly. You can just go on there and shorten any link, and that's very useful if you're trying to keep under your characters, because remember, you can only post 140 characters or fewer. So you have to really think and condense, before you tweet. So tweeting requires a little bit more effort perhaps than Facebook, but it is really useful for some specific stuff. And, just an example of what tweeting looks like. If you haven't ever been on Twitter, this is what it looks like. Okay, and your Twitter toolbox. Twitter chats, I mentioned those earlier, so you can partner with another organization or individual or several others at a specific day and time to discuss an issue or a topic using specific hashtags, and then you can promote your Twitter chat on Twitter, of course, or on Facebook. And it's good if you're hosting, you want to come up with questions ahead of time and share them with the people that you're going to be discussing with, your invited guests. If you're a guest, I would ask to see the questions ahead of time so you can go ahead and prepare your answers. It's much easier than trying to come up with them off the top of your head, especially with the 140 character limit. Cross-promotion, you can arrange with another organization or group or individual, someone who has a lot of reach, to promote each other. So, mention each other in your tweets, share each other's content. That's a good way to start getting yourself out there. And there are also management tools like Hootsuite and TweetDeck that let you control and watch content. That's a little bit more advanced. So if you're already on Twitter and you're really active, for example, TweetDeck will let you follow several conversations at the same time. It kind of makes me feel very ADD and sort of overwhelming, but it is a good way if you're trying to track multiple hashtags at the same time. If you're in a Twitter chat, you can definitely use TweetDeck to sort of keep an eye on different conversations all at once. And then a few suggestions of Twitter accounts you might want to follow. Of course, follow us, please. USPWN, thebody.com, of course, posts great content. AIDS Meds, Sero Project, Black Women's Health, Save Ryan White B, RH Reality Check, Color Lines, VAW.net, NSVRC. Of course, follow your favorite journalists. If there are reporters who are putting out stuff that you really like, follow them on Twitter. Follow your favorite publications. For example, my favorite news, what I read for my politics and news is The Nation, so of course I follow The Nation on Twitter. And your favorite celebrities, especially the activists, if they're tweeting things that you're into and you're interested in, follow them, see what comes up. And I'm going to pass it over to Barb, and remember we will have time for Q&A at the end. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Barb so she can share Colorado's exciting campaign and how they use social media in it. Are you there, Barb?
Oh, can you hear me, Jenny?
Oh, yep. Sorry. I accidentally had you muted. You're ready.
That's all right. Slight moment of panic there, so now we're breathing.
Sorry.
Nope, not to worry. So good afternoon, everyone. I am really excited to talk about social media and how we used it in Colorado for, in particular, our last 6 months where we were trying to introduce legislation, organize advocates, focus national attention on what we were trying to do to get a little bit of pressure. And so my presentation is mostly screen captures of how we used it. And for PWN Colorado, we actually had 2 Facebook pages. We had PWN Colorado Members and Allies, which is a public group, so it is open to everyone. And PWN Colorado members are aware that this is open to everyone, so they are careful about posting or identifying either themselves living as women living with HIV or identifying somebody else. We're always very cautious about disclosure on that. But it is interesting because we have had a number of women who have recently been diagnosed with HIV who have found PWN Colorado that way. And so I think that having an open group in some ways certainly helps for outreach. And it always helps for advocacy because we could refer people to our Facebook page. We also have a Colorado Mod Squad, which is the name of the group that was driving the legislation, and that is where we shared public information. And so I think it's important when you are thinking about a social media strategy to think about how you are going to be using it and what you want to have public and what you want to kind of hold more closely. So we used Twitter, we used Facebook, we used text, we used Google Groups to be able to share documents, we used Google Docs. And the Google Groups and the Google Docs were quite nice because for the drafters, the people who were actually writing the legislation, it gave us an opportunity to have a place to share documents and to do editing in real time remotely so that we didn't all have to be in the same room, but that it was not being shared widely, which was important because we were working on some pretty sensitive stuff, and we managed to introduce in our legislation some things that if people had had a little bit more notice of, they probably would have fought a little bit harder against. So we were trying to walk both ways, which is to be very social about it, but also to have a place where we could engage that wasn't being shared widely. So Facebook, first off, we use our Facebook page as a means to get people involved. And so we go ahead and post our Mod Squad flyer there. And the reason why I asked about trolls is that we actually had some people who were trolling us and did post on our Facebook page, and we encouraged them to come and to talk at the Mod Squad meeting and to meet us. And when they didn't show up but continued to just troll us, we went ahead and de-invited them, so de-followed them and barred them membership from our page, which, so even though the Mod Squad is a public page, it was a way that we could sort of say that this was somebody who wasn't really interested in engaging proactively, and so we removed them. But we do that. We were very hesitant to do that until we had tried to engage people in other ways. And then on the lower left corner is our Google group, which is the Colorado Mod Squad, and this is a way to share information. So it says, I'm not sure if you can read that, but it's from Carrie, and it says, "Hi everyone, we should be up next." And so this was our testimony, and it was giving people the link to be able to follow us via a video link in the chamber, and so we were able to share that with people. We also posted that on our Facebook page and put it out via Twitter. And so that is a way to keep people involved, especially if they are not able to travel. In Colorado, we're a pretty big state, and so we made sure that we posted a lot of what was going on our Facebook page and in our Twitter feed so that people could actually follow us even if they weren't able to get into Denver. And if there was a way for them to listen in or to watch, we made sure to share that as well. Another strength of social media is to get people educated. And so oftentimes we found out that people were not as up on language or on sort of the basics of HIV criminalization and the need to reform these laws. And so we would share things on our Facebook page and then would actually go ahead and share it elsewhere. And so this screen capture with the 5 things media makers can do, if you can see down at the bottom, there's somebody who is in Colorado, and he said, you know, I'm glad you posted this. It's not only helpful to those just getting educated about people living with HIV, but it's also a valuable reminder to those of us living with HIV on how we should not only address others but ourselves. And so we, you know, had an opportunity often to engage with people who perhaps were not interested in supporting the criminalization movement, but wanted to become engaged in an advocacy effort. And so that was pretty useful for us. And one thing that I want to say at the top of this actually presentation is that it is important to have a social media strategy when you begin. We did not, and we ended up sort of chasing a little bit after hashtags. We were very clear about Facebook, and we were very comfortable using Facebook. So we had our Colorado Facebook page, we had our Mod Squad Facebook page, we had our personal Facebook pages, and so we were all very comfortable with that. But Twitter we had used personally but not for advocacy, and so we did not set up a hashtag or a handle, which would have been really helpful. So as we go through these Twitters, you will be able to see that people called us, you know, the Colorado PWN Mod Squad. They called us the Mod Squad of Colorado. They called us kind of everything you could think of. And so when we go back and we try and do research based on the hashtags, it's kind of a bit of a struggle because it is in so many different places. So think about what you're going to use and agree on what you're going to be called from the very beginning, and it will certainly make things easier. So we use social media to keep people up to date. And on the left, we have the Twitter accounts, and we have a tweet from me that then Ken Pinkella follows. And this is really helpful because this was in December when we were doing our first strategic planning. And by posting this on Twitter, we were able to get more people to our next stakeholder meeting, so we used it to amplify the voice of people who perhaps were not on our initial lists of invitations. And in posting this, if you see right above my picture and my post, there's a post from Ken Pinkella that talks about upholding and reviewing his conviction, and it has links there as well. And so even while I was posting, I was getting information and updates from other people and could retweet that and make sure also that what they were talking about was included in our legislation. So Twitter can give you some pretty instant feedback, or if you are in a meeting, you can ask somebody to look something up for you and they can tweet it back or they can text it back to you. And oftentimes when you don't know who to ask or who's online, it's a great way to get an answer. We use that when we were actually talking about some testing requirements, and I wanted to know what the CDC said, and I did not have web access. And so I was able to tweet it out, and then somebody looked it up and sent me the link back, which was really helpful. So I was able to continue to just sort of talk in the meeting and then pretend like I was brilliant and share what somebody else had looked up for me. And it was pretty powerful, and it really felt like so much of what we had done was being supported nationally. And that's an incredible feeling when you're doing advocacy. Then we also, on the right side, that's a Facebook post, and that's after our draft with all of our notes behind it. The person down below, Derek Stowell, was not able to attend, and so he was actually able to see that we had our final draft, and then we sent him a link to the final draft, and so he was able to be kept in the link as well. Next up, it's really important when you're dealing with advocacy that people know that you're watching. On the left-hand side, and this is a interesting continuation of what Jennie said, which is that when you post something, it is best not to post it in anger, and especially in advocacy, not to post something in anger. Because as you will see down below the picture, I posted, "Holy crap, Representative Leonard introduced an amendment to a bill about reasonable accommodation for pregnancy requiring men to hold doors for women, hashtag 1950 question mark." That was problematic because I ended up having a one-on-one conversation with Representative Leonard, and somebody had shown him that. And so we spent more time talking about why I felt that that was a challenging and disrespectful amendment to introduce than me being able to convince him that our STI modernization that we were introducing was useful. So be cautious. It is always absolutely fine to state your own opinions, but I think that draft it and then think about it for 5 minutes and come back and think if that is actually really something that you want to be out in the universe. So that's a life lesson there. And then on the right side, so not only are you watching being critical, but it also means that you're watching and being supportive. And so over on the right-hand side, in the top corner, this was a session on May 9th. Our session ended May 11th. So this is the wee bitter hours, and the legislators ended up staying until 1 o'clock in the morning. And we stayed with them. And we tweeted that we were there with them and that they were being amazing. And so I'm not sure if you can see the print. It's a little small, but it says Heroes Corners for Rights and Access, hashtag PWN Speaks. And those were the 3 people who really were standing and testifying about the importance of STI modernization and the impact on people living with HIV. And then below that is indeed all the monster drinks that everybody drank to be able to get through and survive that session. So a little bit of a sense of humor and certainly a little bit of praise, especially if you tag people, is really useful. So we use social media in Colorado as well as part of our campaign to share documents. On the left side is an email that I shared, and again, a little bit of humor is always very helpful because it turned out that this was supposed to go just to our specific group, and it had gotten shared with some other people who we didn't want to have access to it, but fortunately I wasn't speaking too ill of them. But it says, "Ever feel like you want to just hand out statistics, drop the mic, and walk away? Here's the fresh off the presses 5-year trend for STIs in Colorado." And so that turned out to be a very useful document. And by sharing it electronically, people were able to look at it and have it as part of their presentations in real time. And then it is also about sharing documents that give a better understanding and a broader understanding. And so on the right, that's just a Facebook post that Edwin Bernard from the HIV Justice Network posted on the Mod Squad page. So once you develop traffic and people start realizing that you are doing some work, if they have something that they feel will be useful, they can go, if your group is open, and post on your Facebook page. And this is something that Edwin shared with us, which was very helpful, which we might not have found when we needed it because we were pretty tired and staying up late. So I think that is also helpful, is that when you talk about amplifying your voice, this is particularly useful. You can use Facebook or email for a call to action. So this is an email, and I drafted a letter for an oppositional email. This is really helpful if you send it out via Google Groups because people can copy and paste. And if you notice, I have all of the people they're supposed to send it to with their email addresses, so people could just copy and paste that. When we're doing advocacy, easy is certainly, a little bit easier, and rather than saying, please send an email to all of the Democrats on the legislative committee to oppose this. Instead, it was like, send a letter, an email to these people, and here's what we are recommending you say. And that actually ended up getting a significant number of people sending it. We had 28 people send this exact email to these people within 2 hours. And so we were able to say that this was something that the community stood behind, not just us as a small group. All right. You can share your lessons learned, and you can also share excitement. And so I use Twitter and Facebook when I'm at conferences to go ahead and call out so that people know that we're bringing them into the room. And so we have Carrie Hartel presenting at the HIV is Not a Crime, and this PWN tweet was linked to HIV is Not a Crime, and I actually replied to this and forwarded this to all of our representatives and our senators who had supported the bill so that they knew that we were really bringing them into the room and sharing not just what we had accomplished, but also giving them a shout out. And I think of social media as ripples and ponds. So as we shared this, people then retweeted it from their Twitter feed. So it gave us also, and PWN also, a certain level of engagement. And you'll see up above that elected officials actually do use Twitter. Pat Stedman is right above the picture from the HIV is Not a Crime that Nana had tweeted. And he's saying, I'm in Huntsville with HIV is Not a Crime Training Academy and here to talk about our win in Colorado with Senate Bill 146, HIV is Not a Crime. And that actually was retweeted, and somebody came up to me at a Democratic fundraiser and asked if I had been part of that. And so I think when we're talking about getting our message out, social media can be effective in ways that we are not even aware of. So sharing the excitement, making sure to thank people. So I and other members of PWN Colorado and the Mod Squad are really good about ensuring that when we stand up on a stage that we say that we are there really for all of our committee and all of our community and all of our everyone in Colorado who participated. And we will often go ahead and re-Facebook post something so that we can tag the people at the health department, the people who are elected officials, the people at the AIDS service organizations, as well as the Mod Squad members and the PWN Colorado members who want to have themselves mentioned. So again, this is a bit of pre-work you need to do, but it gives you an opportunity to really do a shout out. And then the Twitter on the right-hand side is when I was in Washington, D.C., and I was talking about our successes, and I was able to tweet back to our partner at the health department's boss how wonderful she had been, and it actually got written up in her review about being a really strong community partner. So I think that, again, it gives us an opportunity to thank and to share information and excitement beyond what we're even aware of. Next up, and finally, it gives you a chance to connect with media. And so when I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm thinking about news that we found, so for example, the zero transmission for people who are virally suppressed that some people might have seen via email today, I actually look up our media's Twitter handles, so like at MSNBC or at 9 News or at Rachel Maddow, and I will tweet it out to them and share it, and they will usually follow you back. And then occasionally when you're doing something, they will actually like something that you're working on. So this is from a radio show that I did with Ken Pinkella and Tammy Hott. And I just said, loving the Pause I Am radio program with my hero, Ken Pinkella, and Wonder Woman Tammy Hott, PWN Speaks, the Zero Project, and Davinia Connors, who was the presenter, and it actually got liked by Chris Parente, who is a morning host, and he actually called me up afterwards and asked if we could talk about what exactly I had been speaking about in that. So, you know, it's a long-range strategy, but it actually can work pretty well, you know, especially if you're willing to put time and energy into it. Because what I had done by just sort of tweeting out exciting things or interesting things had made myself sort of the subject matter expert in his mind, and that is always really helpful when we're trying to get our message across around advocacy. Best of all, social media is an excellent way to share your victories. So you'll see on the left-hand side that those are pictures of us when we passed our legislation. And indeed, we started off by saying, today we changed the world. The Colorado Senate voted to pass the bill. And we have pictures of us all looking incredibly exhausted and like we've been dragged backwards through a shed. But, you know, it was an accomplishment, and we wanted to get it out as soon as possible. And people had really shared it and retweeted it. And then later on when we had a bill signing, we went ahead and videotaped that and shared that as well. And you will notice from the hashtags, Colorado Mod Squad, Senate Bill 146, Changemakers, that people were getting really creative with the hashtags. And so in retrospect, having one common hashtag would have been really helpful. And then finally, when you're talking nationally, this has been really useful. We go ahead and when we're doing AIDS Watch and we're going and talking to our representatives and our senators, we will go ahead and let them know we are coming. So I said, just finished the AIDS Watch orientation, looking forward to our visit with, Representative Perlmutter in D.C. next week. He speaks for me. And then I hashtag PWN Speaks. And then after we had a chance to see them, we go ahead and we take a picture, even if there's not a staff member, and we post it and we make sure that they know that we are appreciative because we are constantly thinking about that next time we need to ask them to vote something down, to support something. And by having gotten into their Twitter feeds, they will actually follow you pretty easily. And lessons learned, I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly because I know we're just about at time. But it's important to remember that disclosure is not mandatory, that people can participate. They can tweet, they can Facebook post, just as a concerned member of the community. So we ensure that we don't tag people in pictures unless we have their understanding. Pictures are important. A cell phone list is really helpful because you can use it to contact people very quickly. It's Facebook and Twitter people have to actually look at, but messaging via text people tend to pop up and will check more often. Create a common hashtag or handle and use it consistently. Yes, that would have been helpful. And have a practice session before things heat up because I did have some advocates ask me how to use Twitter when we were in the middle of a testimony, and that was not the time that I was at all willing or happy to share with them. Finally, if you're going to be presenting, go ahead and use a hashtag or put your handle down so that people will know how to contact you or to sing your praises. For example, if anybody's on Twitter right now, you can go ahead and tweet at Barb Cardell is amazing. Hashtag PWN Speaks for all of us. That's just an example. And otherwise, if you have a common hashtag, you can follow if people are looking and are sharing your information. And then finally, always keep your phone charged. This is a text that I got, and this was one of our late night sessions. Actually, this was in the afternoon, and Danae Escar is the representative who introduced it into the House in Colorado, and she was getting a lot of pushback. And so it says, she's asking me, is this the current statute? And I'm like, yes, those are public health orders. Yes, after it's heard by court. Then she's like, help. And so I am tweeting her, or actually, messaging her responses to the questions that she's being asked. And she was smart enough that she had her phone in her binder, and so she was able to see all of this as she asked me, and so we were able to do that. And with that, I will go ahead and conclude, and hopefully that was helpful to see at least some real-world examples of how Facebook, Twitter, texting, and Google groups can be helpful.
Well, thank you so much, Barb. So we are kind of at time, but anyone who wants to stay on for a couple of minutes and ask a question, I think Shyronn and Barb can both stick around for a few minutes, and I certainly can. So if you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat box or you can also unmute yourself by pressing *6 and make sure that your phone also is not muted. So if anyone has any questions, please go right ahead and you can direct them to any or all of us.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? I have
Hello?
one question. They say that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hello? Okay, I
hear
have
you.
one quick question. What is Snapchat?
Okay, so I will, actually, let me, for Shyronn and Barb, do either one of you use Snapchat?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you anyway.
Okay, I can answer it real quick, even though I don't use Snapchat personally. I think it's you can take pictures, and it's something where like people can see them for about an hour or something, and then they allegedly disappear. Except that you can also save them, and people like repost them on Facebook. So once again, anything, you know, you should always temper your expectations of privacy once something is anywhere online. But it's very popular with kids and younger people. I have friends also who are using it now. You can put funny filters on them and stuff. I haven't really heard about Snapchat being used much for advocacy, but maybe that will be coming up in the future. I'm not sure. But that's sort of the limit of my understanding of Snapchat at this time. I haven't really heard about it being used for advocacy work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there other questions? If anyone is speaking, you are on mute. You can press *6 to unmute yourselves if you would like to ask a question, or you can also put it in the chat box. Okay, well, I'm not hearing or seeing any other questions, so I guess we will go ahead and close it out. We're right around time. I have put our contact information up here on the last slide, so please feel free to jot those down if you don't already have them. So you've got my email, Shyronn's email, and Barb's email. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us with any questions that you may have after the presentation. And then, of course, the PWN Facebook page, if you haven't already liked it, please go ahead and do so. That way you can, stay up to date. I try to share a lot of information from that page that's relevant to people living with HIV. Also, the PWN Georgia page, Shyronn does a great job with that and posts a lot of really useful information on there as well. So I encourage you to like both of those pages. And Shyronn she taught me something today too about changing settings so that a page that you like, that their information will show up in your newsfeed more frequently. So that's a really good suggestion that I didn't even know about. So I recommend that you do that with our pages so that you can stay up to date. Make sure that it makes it into your Facebook feed. And then you can also join our Facebook groups, the PWN Members and Allies group. If you're not already a member, you can look it up and request to be a member, and I can add you. The PWN Colorado Members and Allies, I'm sure Barb would be happy to add anyone who's interested. And the I Know Awareness group, I'm sure Shyronn will be happy to add any of you as well. So if you're not already members of those groups, you can contact me for PWN Members and Allies, Barb for Colorado, and Shyronn for I Know Awareness. And then, of course, Twitter handles. I've got the PWN Twitter handle and Barb's and Shyronn's Twitter handles there. So please feel free to copy those down. And once again, this webinar has been recorded, and I will be posting the recording on our website and also sharing the full slide deck there. So if there's anything from here that you would like to share with other people, with your regional chapter or with any other groups that you may have, please feel free to do that. I will post that on our website within the next day or two, and I also try to send out an email that has those links so that you can access them. So thank you so much to everyone for being on here. Please feel free to get in touch with any other questions. Good luck with your social media work, and I'm always available to assist if you need support in any way around social media or anything else communication. So I appreciate all of you for being on here. Thank you so much to Shyronn and Barb for doing a wonderful presentation. That was really helpful. I know I learned some stuff. Hopefully you guys did too. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of the day. And if you're going to Durban, safe travels. And I'm sure you'll be representing us well. And I will be watching jealously through social media. So have a great day, everybody.